Our next conversation today is with Denver Mayor Mike Johnston. Thank you for coming back to Next.
Thanks for having me.
We should mention that we are sitting down for this conversation at 2 p.m. Denver time, so some executive orders have been signed by the president, some have not, but it's possible things happen later today. We're going to talk about immigration.
Yes.
Democratic Governor Jared Polis says that he welcomes the Trump administration's assistance in removing people from our community who are here illegally and have committed crimes. Do you also welcome that help?
Yeah, we will partner on violent criminals as we have always done. In the past, the last administration, we will do it again. We don't want criminals of any background on our streets, and that's been clear for us consistently.
Do you draw the line at violent crime? A lot of what I hear from your office talks about distinguishing between people who have committed violent crimes and those who have not. How about somebody who is here without authorization, who say is a repeat drunk driver? Would you work with ICE to get them out?
So right now what we do is we don't proactively ask someone's status when they're arrested, say for drunk driving, nor do we proactively report to ICE. But if ICE reaches out to us and says, we know you have someone in your custody who is a criminal, what we will do is partner with them and notify them when we're releasing them so they can pick them up. So if there is a violent criminal ICE is identified or a criminal ICE is identified with a serious criminal history and they ask us for notification, we will notify them when we release them and they can pick them up.
But do you draw a line between those who you believe should be priorities for removal and those should not? And where would you rank somebody who, say, poses a threat to public safety but is not necessarily dangerous?
We don't. In the past, all the requests we've gotten have been for violent criminals because often we don't hold you very long in our jail. If you're not a violent criminal, you'd be out on a bond or otherwise if it was a small, minor offense. If we see a dramatic expansion in the number of requests that come from this administration versus the last one, we could reevaluate. But right now, we honor those requests that come in because those requests almost always focus on violent criminals.
That said, there are ways in which Denver does not cooperate with ICE. One big pinch that they're going to have coming up is beds to place people in, right? The Lake and Riley Act, which has passed the House, has not yet passed the Senate, would require mandatory detention without a hearing for people accused of, say, shoplifting.
Yes.
It's going to put a lot of people in ICE detention. I presume Denver is not interested in offering space to ICE to house people.
We will not do that. We will not do ICE's job for them on a whole number of fronts. We're not going to do federal immigration enforcement, and we're not going to hold or incarcerate people for what are civilian immigration charges, not actual crimes.
Are there things that Denver could be doing to assist ICE and still stay within the bounds of state law, which limits that cooperation? Are there things that you could be doing to help that you choose not to?
No, at this point, I think we found the right balance. The state law and city law prohibits us from proactively asking someone's status or proactively sharing those people's identities. But again, when they ask us for someone based on their identification of a criminal database and or a federal immigration database, we partner to connect them with them, and we think that's reasonable. The same is true if they have an active criminal warrant for someone that they're looking for that they know is committed maybe a federal crime. Our police department would help in that search for that criminal offender. Anytime there's a criminal warrant out, we will be full partners.
We've heard for years about kind of a lack of communication or coordination between the city and ICE. I mean, those late night faxes that tell people come pick somebody up in the middle of the night. If ICE just says, hey, let's cooperate better within the bounds of Colorado law, are you willing to do that?
We're willing to cooperate within the bounds of our city and state law, which is what we've been doing with the Biden administration, we would do with the new ones. We don't see that as a change of course. If there are violent criminals they want to target, we will be happy to partner with them as we have been.
It seems like a lot of the concern that you hear from the American political left is about the deportation of people who have committed no crime or violation other than how they entered the country. About half of the deportations or removals, as they call them, from the Denver sector in the Biden administration were people who had committed no other violation other than crossing the border. If that is so odious to folks on the political left, why are we just hearing about it now as opposed to over the last 4 years?
I mean, the great majority of, as you know, Kyle, the great majority of removals that were happening over the last 4 years were happening at the border. There are folks who've been contacted at the border, they're immediately turned around and sent back. That's been true over the last 6 months. We have not had high-profile raids in the city and county of Denver over the last year. You don't have kids waiting at school at 4 o'clock in the afternoon with parents who don't show up like we had at the Swift plant years ago. And so I think most of those raids have been targeted either at folks with criminal behaviors or folks that have just immediately crossed the border, not someone who's been here for 10 years and building a life.
Yeah, but yet we know, like in the last year in Denver, roughly about half of the people who were taken out of the Denver area and removed did not have another violation. But you bring up the idea of kids being left waiting for parents who never show up. That's part of some directives that you've issued to city employees about how to deal with these situations. The Colorado Fiscal Institute estimates that about 90,000 kids in Colorado live with an adult in the household who is undocumented, at least one. What is the city of Denver prepared to do if all of a sudden parents don't show up to pick up kids from school?
Yeah, this is one of the heartbreaking realities of what we think could happen. I mean, for us, It's first important that all of these, what we call secure places, churches, schools, hospitals, we think these places have to be off limits for ICE actions. They've historically been so. There's been bipartisan support for that idea.
But with respect, that's not your call, right? That's the administration's call, and they signaled pre-inauguration that they were going to roll back that restriction on ICE to open up places like churches and schools for raids. What, if anything, can you do about that?
Well, what we can do is we can take them to court if they do come for those sites. We think that is that's unnecessary, and it just stokes fear in the community. You can't have, these are core services for a city. You can't have a safe city if people don't trust going to their own hospitals. You can't have a safe city if people don't believe they can send their kids to school every day. If you can't trust you can go worship your own God in your own church. And so we think those are fundamental rights that should be protected. If they violate those, we will seek legal action to try to stop that. But also, you're right, we do know that it's possible no matter where they find folks, we will have kids who will lose parents in this process. And so we have our team at Human Services ready. We have foster care placements prepared. We have family reunification efforts that we'll pursue. But we do know one of the likely outcomes is we will have a lot of kids, if they follow through on their promises, who will be left without parents.
So I want to drill down on this idea of you pushing back on raids at schools, hospitals, churches, things like that. On what legal grounds? Religious freedom? What would the grounds be to stop ICE from coming into a hospital if they want to come into a hospital?
Well, first of all, you would have to have a criminal warrant to enter those sites. And so if you entered those sites without a warrant, that would be illegal. And so we think, and that's why you'll see schools and DPS has come out and said they will not allow ICE officials into schools. Schools are reserved for school business. It's not DPS's job, nor is it our job to enforce federal immigration law. And I think in all those places, like churches or hospitals where we think you get a more functional and healthy society when those places are protected. We think that's core to a city being safe.
DPS has put out a memo to its folks saying basically if you've got ICE at the door, ask them for a warrant, call our attorneys, that kind of thing. I don't know that this has ever happened. I remember during the Obama administration, when there were a lot of deportations during the Obama administration, you had people taking shelter in churches in Colorado. What would you think about people taking shelter in government buildings if they see the city of Denver truly as a sanctuary? Maybe some political activist, maybe somebody within your own city government, maybe another elected official wants to make a point and have somebody inside a city of Denver building to shield them from ICE.
We don't anticipate that happening. I don't think that's the likely scenario. I know we've talked to the school district and others about the possibility that would they have kids who would choose to stay in school rather than be afraid of leaving. Obviously, our first job is to lead the city and make sure every part of the city is running effectively and efficiently. And so we've used the web building for emergency operations before. We don't think this would be one of them. Do I think that churches around the state will step in and try to provide sanctuary again if folks need it? I think that's likely or possible. We don't anticipate doing that with city buildings.
You put out a number of directives to the city employees on this. Does anything change Denver's approach, or are you reiterating what you were already doing?
I think we're reiterating what we're already doing and how we would interact with this type of mass deportation effort we haven't seen before. And our take is pretty clear. We've discussed some of it. Yes, we will continue to partner on violent criminals. We have a shared interest in getting those folks off the street. No, we won't do ICE's job for them. We're not going to do federal law enforcement, and we're not going to respond to support their efforts on raids if they're making them. We are going to stand up for protected populations and places. It's not just churches, schools, and hospitals. The other issue you heard was people who have come to the country and tried to follow the rules. If you came and set up an appointment at the border and got entrance through Customs and Border Protection, that program has just been shut down today. You may have heard that. They're potentially targeting those folks for removal too. They would repeal their parole by executive order and then immediately target them for removal. These are folks that are working legally with work authorization on the job. Their kids are in school. We think those are not target populations that people either ever signed up for or supported to when they voted for Trump. And so we think that just divides and breaks up communities, doesn't actually make us safer. So
you can say that, but I mean, if they revoke those folks' parole and they come for them, say at a construction site, whatever, what can the city do?
Well, we can take them to court, and we can, the same way if they try to revoke birthright citizenship, that's clearly a constitutional protection. We and others would expect to litigate that. And so we can sue as we would. We would raise our voices to make sure that people understand that it's immoral and un-American. And I imagine you'd see public resistance to that. I think that is, I think to many people, way beyond the pale.
So there's opposition, there is legal action. Will there be disobedience of the law by employees of the city and county of Denver?
No, we have no plan to disobey the law. I think what we want to make sure is that our city employees are also obeying city law. Right? We had an ICE agent last week who demanded that a Denver police officer turn over an individual to ICE. That officer would have broken city law and state law if they did that. And so we have a city and state law that says we do not turn people over in custody. We do not ask their status. We need to honor those laws. We want to make sure our officers and our outreach workers know what those laws are so they can abide by them.
So I want to make sure that we're very clear on this, because just last week we were reporting Republican commissioners in Douglas County have talked about how they're going to take action to willfully disobey state law that they don't support in order to help with the deportation. But you're saying Denver's employees will not similarly willfully disobey federal or state law in order to stop the deportations?
No, we'll abide by state and local law, and we will clearly abide by federal law. And so that'll continue to be true. We just won't do federal law enforcement's job for them, and we won't help support their effort to kind of bring terror to communities if they are trying to raid schools or hospitals or churches.
And currently, the courts have upheld that view, that you're under no obligation to enforce federal law.
Correct.
All hell would break loose if courts ruled the other way.
Yes, I think you would find widespread resistance to that.
President Trump attempted to strip federal funding from Denver during the first term. He was overruled by the courts. Are you preparing to live without some federal funding in the second term? At one point, I know your office was even kicking around some numbers.
We're preparing to fight to keep the federal resources that we think Denver taxpayers are entitled to, just like everybody else. And so we assume that he's not going to do that. If he does, we would fight it both with legal action and with political action. You know, there are almost half of America's residents who live in a city or a state that have some sort of protections for migrants. And I don't think you can cut taxpayer funding to half of the country.
That said, are you also preparing to make a budget work without it, in addition to standing up for it?
Yeah, we're prepared for all options. There's no way to know what I mean, are they going to cut the Colfax Bus Rapid Transit project? It's hard to say. That's $250 million of federal funds that are already deployed. And so there's no way to know what they could or could not come for, but obviously we'll be prepared to fight for the city and then be prepared to manage whatever happens if they do that.
So published reports say that they're going to start enforcement actions in Chicago. Are you surprised that Trump is not making good on his promise to start it in Colorado?
I don't think we know yet. I think it's possible there'll be folks on the ground tomorrow in Colorado. If not, in the coming days or weeks, we wouldn't be surprised. I talked to the mayor of Chicago. We'll be in regular contact, but we think they're likely to be in both of our cities quickly, and we want to make sure that that is orderly and safe and that people feel their rights are protected.
You've walked back comments you made suggesting that Denver police and even some citizens would be meeting ICE at the city limits. Have your comments made this city more of a target for the Trump administration?
No, I don't think they have. I mean, he called this project Project Aurora ever since he came to visit Aurora during the campaign, and so that was an area of target. But I think that what we do know is there's a broad divide between saying we're going to round up criminals, which everyone agrees with, and saying you're going to deport 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 million people. That means you are taking people off the job, you're taking grandmothers out of their homes, you're taking kids out of classes at that scale. I don't think any American is going to stand by for that and think that that's something they'd be proud of. That takes us back to the days of Japanese internment. I mean, they were talking about the Alien Invasion Act today. That hasn't been used since the internment of Japanese Americans in World War II. I don't think any American wants to stand by and see the flag stained by that kind of action again.
Your predecessor created the Denver Immigrant Legal Services Fund to provide both taxpayer dollars and private dollars to help people find legal representation if they're facing removal or if they have a removal order. Are you going to seek more funding for that program? We
have funded that program currently, and we anticipate there'll be more needs there, and so we do have resources available to support them if they have more demand.
When you say more resources, any idea on a ballpark?
We think it could be $1 million or $2 million. We have dollars set aside in our fund for this year for our migrant services. Our services have been way down because arrivals are way down. A reminder to viewers, I mean, all of our shelters for migrants are closed. We don't have any migrant encampments on the street. We've put 7,000 people to work on work authorization legally. We have cut the budget by 90%. We do not have a crisis today on the streets of Denver around our migrant needs, and so we don't see the need for the federal government to bring a new one to our city.
There are conservative pundits in Colorado specifically calling on the Trump administration to arrest you. You received a letter in December from a Trump-affiliated legal group that warned you that you could be subject to arrest or potential personal financial liability from private plaintiffs under RICO statutes. What is your response to those who are personally calling for your arrest or for people to go after your family's finances over immigration?
Yeah, we've done nothing to break the law in Denver, and I've done nothing to break the law. When folks arrived in the city and needed services, often they were sent by the Republican governor of Texas to arrive in our city without their own consent. We were not going to leave them outside in the cold at 10 o'clock in the morning on a January night. And so we've provided support to get them connected and up on their feet so that they can live the American dream and get a job and support themselves. That's, we think, what they wanted and what we wanted. So there's nothing we've done that we think is illegal or that we're not proud of. I think we've stood up in the gap to support all of Denver's residents, including the ones that were newcomers.
Final question for you. In 2017, I'm sure you remember when then Mayor Hancock unfurled that big Denver Hearts Immigrants banner on the front of City Hall. I haven't seen that banner out in a while. Certainly the city has done a lot to show that it is a welcoming city to immigrants. Is the message from Denver going to change if the message could create further hardship for people in the city?
I think Denver's really clear about who we are, and that will not change. We're not going to be bullied or blackmailed out of our values. We are a welcoming city. We have been and we will be. We're also a place that thinks people should work hard, play by the rules, get ahead. The folks that have come to the city are doing that. They're applying for asylum, applying for status, and getting jobs. If you're committing crimes, yes, we will hold you accountable. But if you're here to work hard and support your family, this will always be a welcoming city.
Denver Mayor Mike Johnston, thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.